Christmas is better without you. My dad's text blinked on my phone. I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Just like that, in 5 words, he summed up what I'd known all along but never wanted to hear. After all these years, after every fight, every apology, every attempt to keep the family together, it came down to a text. I typed a single word back. Fine. Not because I was okay with it, but because anything more would have been begging, explaining, or justifying myself. And I was tired of explaining. I pressed send, put the phone down, and sank into the couch staring at the Christmas tree lights I hadn't even bothered to untangle this year. They blinked like tiny judgmental eyes, judging me for being alone, for being the problem, for not being good enough to sit at the dinner table with my own family. I couldn't tell anyone what I felt, not my friends, not my coworkers. How do you explain to people that your parents, the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, have decided that Christmas, of all times, is better without you? And then my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. My stomach sank before I even answered. Emily? This is Mr. Caldwell. I'm calling on behalf of your parents. My heart stopped. A lawyer? Already? I swallowed hard. Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. There are some matters regarding the family estate that require your immediate attention, he said. Calmly, but with that unmistakable lawyerly edge that makes every word sound like a threat. Your parents have expressed concerns about your involvement with the property, and they insist we handle this formally. I felt like someone had knocked the air out of me. I had expected anger, coldness, maybe even silence, but not this. Not legal threats over the phone before the first snow even hit the ground. I don't understand, I said. Your parents' instructions are clear, he continued. I will send you the documents. You'll need to review them carefully. Click. The line went dead. I sat there, my head spinning. All those memories, Christmas mornings with Dad pretending the presents were mine, Mom hugging me as if to shield me from his sharp words, James teasing me endlessly while Sophie hid behind her dollhouse, suddenly felt like a cruel joke. The house I grew up in, the traditions I loved, the family I had believed in, it was all suddenly wrapped up in cold legal language and ultimatums. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run away and never look back. But mostly, I felt small, invisible, expendable. I remembered the last Christmas I'd spent here. I was 24, just out of college, and my dad had criticized every gift I bought, every meal I tried to cook, every little thing I had done to make the holiday special. I'd cried alone in my room that night, wishing for anything else but this. And now, more than a decade later, it seemed nothing had changed. I thought about replying to Dad again, but the words wouldn't come. Not now, not ever, maybe. I just stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I remembered something Mom had once said. Some fights are worth stepping into. Some are worth walking away from. I didn't know which this was yet. But one thing was clear. Christmas this year wasn't going to be the same, and I had no idea just how far my parents and my brother were willing to go to make sure I understood that. I closed my eyes and tried to calm my racing thoughts. Maybe it was time to face them. Maybe it was time to go back home. Or maybe, just maybe, it was time to accept that home wasn't what I thought it was. Either way, I had a feeling this was just the beginning. The drive back to my parents' house felt longer than it ever had. The streets were lined with twinkling lights and decorated houses, all cheerful and warm. But inside me, there was nothing but a cold pit of dread. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, imagining Dad's sharp eyes and James's smirk the moment I walked through the door. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as always. The old Victorian stood tall and proud, with its snow-dusted roof and frosted windows. But I knew better now. Inside, it was a battlefield disguised as a family home. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The familiar scent of cinnamon and pine hit me, making my chest ache. Mom was there, of course, bustling around the kitchen like nothing had changed. She turned when she heard the door, her eyes lighting up, briefly. "Emily," she said, rushing over. "You're here. Oh, I didn't know if you'd—" "I'm here," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. She hugged me, and for a moment, I almost believed that everything could be normal. Almost. Then, I saw Dad. Standing in the hallway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He didn't smile, he didn't nod, he just looked disappointed, like I had done something unforgivable. "Emily," he said, his voice tight. "Glad you made it." I nodded. "Merry Christmas, Dad." He didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving a trail of tension in his wake. James appeared from the living room, grinning like a cat who'd caught a mouse. "So, you finally decided to show up," he said, his tone dripping with false warmth. "Mom's been worried sick about you." I forced a laugh. "Really?" "Of course," he said, leaning casually against the doorway. "But it's just different now. Things are different." I felt my stomach twist. I knew exactly what he meant. James had been working with Dad. I could feel it. Every glance, every word, every little pause was a trap waiting to make me slip. Sophie ran up to me, throwing her arms around my waist. "Emily, I'm so happy you're here." Her voice was like a little lifeline, but even her excitement couldn't fully reach me. I hugged her back, holding on just a second too long, hoping she could feel how much I needed her to be on my side. Dinner that night was a minefield. Dad barely spoke, except to make sharp, cryptic comments that James would echo with a grin. Mom tried to smooth things over, her words polite but cautious, afraid of saying the wrong thing in front of him. I tried to eat, tried to laugh at Sophie's little jokes, tried to act normal, but every time I glanced at Dad or James, I felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. It was suffocating. And then, it happened. Dad said, finally breaking the silence. "It's hard to celebrate when some members of this family think they're above everyone else. Some people think they're above everyone else." I froze. Every eye in the room turned to me. James smirked just slightly. I could hear the unspoken accusation in the air. "This is about you, Emily." I don't understand," I said. "You know exactly what I mean," Dad said, low, but his words cut deeper than any scream could. "We'll discuss your involvement in the family estate later. For now, try to enjoy dinner." The rest of the evening passed in tense silence. Every smile felt forced. Every word I spoke was measured. I realized then that I was no longer a daughter in this house. I was a guest under probation, being watched, judged, and tested. But as I lay in my childhood bedroom that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about the lawyer's call, about the documents, about James, about Mom. Something was coming, something I couldn't yet see, but I knew it would change everything. And deep down, I had a feeling that Christmas this year would be remembered not for the presents or the lights, but for the secrets that were about to be revealed. The next morning, I didn't want to get out of bed. My stomach was a knot of anxiety and unease, and every memory from the night before played over and over in my head. Dad's glare, James's smirk, the way Mom's eyes flickered between us, like she was afraid to breathe the wrong word. I finally got dressed and wandered downstairs. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the old floors. Sophie was already at the kitchen table, carefully coloring a picture of our family, a smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. I watched her for a long moment. she still believed in happy families, in love, and forgiveness. I envied her innocence. Mom appeared in the doorway holding a steaming mug of cocoa. She smiled, that fragile, nervous smile I'd known since childhood. "Emily, I thought you might want this," she said softly, handing me the mug. "Thanks," I murmured, taking it. The warmth seeped into my hands, but it didn't reach my heart. Mom hesitated, then glanced around like she wanted to speak but feared being overheard. "Emily, there are things you don't know. Things your father, he doesn't tell you about the house, about your inheritance, about us." I froze. Her words were cautious, almost whispered, but they hit me like a punch. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom swallowed hard. "I've kept some things from you to protect you from your father's, his anger, his pride. There's money set aside for you, savings, investments, something that's yours no matter what he says or does." I blinked, stunned. Why didn't you tell me?" "I was scared," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "Scared that if he found out, he'd take it away. Scared that you'd never forgive me if you knew I'd been hiding it all these years." I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that she had tried to protect me, anger that she had kept secrets, that I had been left in the dark while Dad plotted and schemed. "Mom, I don't even know what to say," I whispered, gripping the mug so tightly my fingers ached. "You don't have to say anything," she said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Just know that I've always been on your side, even when it seemed like I wasn't." Her words hit me harder than anything Dad had ever said. For years, I had blamed her for not stopping him, for letting me feel alone, for letting James get away with everything. And yet, she had been quietly protecting me all along. But before I could respond, the sound of laughter drifted down the hallway. James, probably showing off some new gift to Sophie, pretending nothing was wrong. My stomach sunk again. I realized that even with Mom's support, the battlefield wasn't going away. If anything, it was getting bigger. Dad was still in control, James was still scheming, and I had to figure out how to fight back without losing myself in the process. I decided to look around the house, hoping to find, I didn't know what, maybe old letters, old documents, something that would give me an advantage, something I could hold on to. In the attic, covered in dust and cobwebs, I found a box of old letters tied with a faded ribbon. I opened it and my breath caught. The letters were from Mom, secret correspondences, carefully hidden, detailing savings accounts, investments, even a small cabin in the mountains she had been keeping for me. Tears blurred my vision. For the first time in years, I felt like I had an ally, like I wasn't completely alone in this war. But then I found something else. A letter addressed to Dad, with James's handwriting on it, describing plans to manipulate the family, to undermine me, to gain control over everything. My heart raced. James had been plotting all along, and now I had proof. I clutched the letters to my chest, my mind spinning. This Christmas, it wasn't just about family dinners and presents. It was about betrayal, secrets, and survival. And I realized for the first time that the real fight was only just beginning. That evening, the house felt smaller, suffocating. I couldn't eat, I couldn't laugh. Every glance at Dad or James made my skin crawl. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let them decide my future, my inheritance, my life. I waited until the family was settled in the living room. Dad was reading a newspaper, pretending everything was normal. James was showing Sophie a new gadget, grinning like he owned the world. Mom was quietly sipping her tea, eyes darting nervously between us all. I took a deep breath and walked up to Dad. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. He looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. "About what?" he asked, though I could see the tension in his jaw. "About everything. About the estate, about the text, about Christmas, about how this family treats me like I don't matter." Dad's eyes narrowed. "You think you get to decide how this family works, how we honor traditions, how we handle money?" "Yes," I said firmly, "I do, because I'm your daughter, and I deserve respect. Not ultimatums, not threats." James snorted, a sharp, cruel sound. "Oh, Now you're the hero, fighting for your inheritance. Don't act like you're the victim here, Emily. Dad just keeps the family together. You, on the other hand, think rules don't apply. I felt my blood boil. All these years, James had been charming, manipulative, and now it was all coming out. I pulled out the letters I had found earlier, the ones that proved his scheming, the ones that showed Mom had been secretly supporting me. I found these, I said, holding them up. Letters from Mom. And these? Your little plans, James, the ones you wrote to Dad about undermining me. For a moment, the room was silent. Sophie's eyes went wide. Mom's gasped. Dad's face went red, a mixture of rage and shock. This is, Dad started, but his voice faltered. You've been plotting behind my back? I asked James, my voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. Trying to control the family, the house, everything, and you think I wouldn't find out? James's grin faltered. It's not what you think. Oh, it's exactly what I think, and now you two are going to explain why you think you can treat me like this. Because I've been patient, I've stayed quiet, and now I'm done. Mom stood up, placing a trembling hand on my shoulder. Emily, I'm so sorry. I tried to protect you, but I didn't think it would come to this. Dad slammed the newspaper down, his face a mask of fury. You're making a mistake. You don't know what you're doing. This isn't just about feelings. It's about law, about property, about control, I interrupted. It's about your need to control everyone and everything, and I'm done being controlled. James's face twisted with anger. You think Mom's support matters now? You think you can take everything from us? No, I said, finally feeling the power of truth behind my words. I don't want to take everything. I just want what's mine, what's rightfully mine, and respect, and honesty. Is that too much to ask? The tension was so thick I could feel it pressing down on us all. Every second stretched endlessly. I could hear Sophie's quiet breathing, Mom's shaky hands, Dad's rigid posture. And then Dad's phone buzzed. He picked it up, glanced at it, and his face went pale. What is it? I asked. It's the lawyer, he muttered. They've sent over the final documents. I felt my heart race. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. I didn't know whether to feel fear or triumph. The family I thought I knew was unraveling before my eyes. And I realized something terrifying. Even with evidence, even with Mom on my side, the fight wasn't over. It was just getting started. The lawyer's email arrived just after midnight. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My hands shook as I opened the attachment on my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my face in the dark room. The documents were everything I feared and everything I had hoped for. There were clauses designed to disinherit me if I stepped out of line, if I dared defy Dad's wishes. But there were also accounts, investments, and the cabin Mom had secretly kept for me all these years, proof that, despite everything, someone had my back. I leaned back in my chair, my chest tight with emotion. I realized that I was holding the power now, not Dad, not James, me. And for the first time, I felt free. The next morning, I walked into the living room, documents in hand. Dad was at the table, coffee in front of him, eyes sharp. James lounged on the sofa, smirking, probably assuming I'd crumble. Sophie was coloring again, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Mom hovered near the kitchen doorway, her hands clasped tightly. I cleared my throat. Dad, James, we need to talk. Dad looked up, tension coiling in his shoulders. About what? About this, I said, placing the documents on the table. I know about the clauses. I know about the inheritance. I know about the manipulation. James's smirk faltered. Manipulation? You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I do, I said, my voice steady. I've read everything, and I know what's been going on behind my back. I also know that Mom has been protecting me all this time, even when it meant keeping secrets from me. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Emily, this isn't about protection. This is about keeping order. You think you can just... I think I can stand up for myself, I shouted. I think I can demand respect. I think I can say no to being controlled. Mom stepped forward. Emily's right. He's forgotten that respect matters more than control, more than rules, more than tradition. James tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. No, James, you've had your chance to manipulate, to scheme, to control. That ends now. I'm not walking away. I'm not begging. I'm not apologizing for existing. There was silence. The air was thick with shock and disbelief. I could see Dad's jaw tightening, the muscles in his face twitching. James looked like he had been slapped. I've made my decision, I said, finally feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. I'm taking my share. I'm leaving this house. I'm not disappearing from Christmas, but I'm no longer letting this family define my worth. That ends tonight. I gathered my documents, turned to Sophie and Mom. I love you both, and I hope one day this family can be happy without lies, without control, without fear. But that day isn't today. I walked out of the living room, the snow crunching beneath my boots as I left the house I had grown up in. I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was making a choice for me and not for anyone else. And though my heart ached for what I was leaving behind, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe next Christmas wouldn't be about perfection or appearances. Maybe it could be about freedom. The morning after I left the house, the world felt different. The snow had fallen overnight, covering the streets and rooftops in a thick, silent blanket. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the quiet wash over me, letting the tension in my chest finally ease. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without fear. No one was judging me. No one was plotting behind my back. No one was deciding my worth. For the first time, I was just me. I thought about Mom. I worried about her, about how Dad and James would react, about whether she could survive in that house without being crushed by their control. I knew she loved me, but I also knew she had spent decades sacrificing her own voice to keep peace. Maybe now, seeing me stand up, she would find her own courage too. Sophie's face floated in my mind, her innocence, her hope. I wish I could tell her that family isn't about control or favoritism, that sometimes walking away from the people who should love you unconditionally, but don't, is loving yourself. I found a small cafe and sat down, wrapped in a thick scarf, my hands around a warm cup of coffee. I opened my laptop and sent a quiet message to Mom and Sophie. Merry Christmas. I love you. Stay safe, stay strong. I'll see you soon. No angry words, no pleading, no demands, just truth. As I watched the snow fall outside the window, I realized something. Family doesn't have to be a prison. Family doesn't have to define who you are. I could choose my own life, my own traditions, my own happiness. I knew that someday I might return to that house, not as a victim, not as someone afraid of Dad or James, but as someone who had earned her own place in the world. For now, though, I would take this Christmas for myself, quiet, free, and maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something better. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not a forced smile, not a polite smile, a real one. And I knew whatever happened next, I had already won.